Howdy, listeners. Hey, this is Paul Frields.
This is Dave Guzman.
And we're breaking out of our normal beginning format here because we did our first ever two-part podcast. We talked a while about James Jamerson, and the conversation just got so deep into what he meant to us that we decided to split it up.
It just seemed the right thing to do at the time.
Yeah. Just, the conversation went in a lot of different directions. And, if you haven't listened to it, you might want to go back and pick up last week's episode. If you're not a subscriber, of course, that's what the easiest way to get a hold of it is to look us up on your podcasts app on your iPhone, your Google Play Music on your Android. You can look up iTunes on your Mac computer or Stitcher Radio on any platform, and you can hit the subscribe link. That will show you this week's episode, but it'll also show you last week's episode and probably a few more behind that. We do recommend, go check out the first part of this podcast to hear like how we got to this point. I think we're going to probably just launch right back into it. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, we'll bring guys right back into our conversation where it started. And hopefully we'll see you next week with another great topic. And again, we want to thank our pal Adam Smolansky for suggesting this topic. He didn't know he was going to get a double header out of it. That's our little way of saying thanks to him. And we hope you guys enjoy it.
Thanks.
Please listen carefully.
So if you're going to be covering a Motown song, we talked a lot about Jamerson and his influence and his genius, but how do you tackle that? Like really to bring this down to the practical level, what do you do when you're faced with a Motown tune?
I say I'm not the guy. No.
Bow out gracefully. I'm not your guy.
I'm not your guy.
I'm not your pal, chum.
That one's for Adam. Adam liked that. I'm not your guy.
I'm not your guy.
No, I
Adam may be your guy though. He's probably your guy,
right? Yeah.
Adam's your guy though.
But I know a guy.
I'm not your guy, but I know a guy.
It's tough because it's definitely one of those pieces that you don't want to fake it. So, or at least for me, like I can't just fake it. So I've got to really tackle it. So, I get pretty deep into figuring out exactly what's going on there as close as I can get.
I mean, to the point of like, do you transcribe the parts and learn them that way or look up like,
I slow it way down and I just try to internalize each part. And it's a big task. It's like one of those things where it's almost like a poison for me that I shouldn't get into because it gets a little too deep. But because the thing is like, I can't do that, the one finger technique. I practice it sometimes just like on odd, in odd times, I'll just go ahead and I'll just give it a shot and just see how far I can go with it. But it's like, it's not. And if I can't get that, then I always hear the difference. I always hear the difference.
Yeah.
It shouts out at me once I start using two fingers because they're just two different pressures.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like my middle finger is just stronger than my pointer finger.
Right.
Index, I guess I call that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They're like two different attacks.
Totally two different, and so then I have to focus on the tension with each. Mostly what I do is I just try to, I just keep in mind what his approach was for me, like how I see it, and I just do the best, translation of that. Which for me, I always feel like there's a lot of, there's a lot of playing around the one. I mean, there is playing on the one, but there's also like playing around it. There's bouncing around that one. Right. There's also like points where he's just kind of like leaves you hanging at the end of the line.
Yeah.
And then pulls you back.
Right.
Hard.
Right.
Like whatever that dramatic thing is, I try to get the essence of that thing. And I also look at, where he's, as I was mentioning, like how I feel like he was playing around, the melody of the vocals and kind of keeping that in mind. And also that he's, as you were mentioning, like that there's a mood piece of it, like where he captures a mood.
Yeah.
And how to get that,
like really feeling that emotion and trying to channel like, what does this mean
Right.
in playing?
And how do I interpret that? Yeah. I mean, there's even, I think I was just listening to, a couple songs, but one of them was Ain't No Mountain High Enough, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's like, I think one of them is like Ain't No Valley Deep Enough.
Ain't No Valley Low Enough.
Low enough.
Yeah.
That's it. And you could see like the bass note drops.
Yeah.
And it's not unintentional. Like,
no.
He's painting a picture for you.
Yeah.
He's getting as literal as he can
He's
with the
giving
instrument.
you, like he's literally telling you what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
At some of those things, I mean, from a sound perspective, I always try to go warm and punchy as much as I can, with whatever I can do with my bass, and try to find like the deadest strings, if I have any, labella, whatever, anything in there, whatever's dead, kind of throw it in there. And, that's kind of the way that I approach it. That's my best swing.
Yeah. Yeah. It totally. I mean, none of us is James. Ain't
Right.
none of us James.
Ain't none of us James.
So yeah, I mean
but you actually, like, I think from overall, like, our experiences with covering music and playing, you probably cover more, at least that era, Motown or Jamerson songs, right?
It at times, like, I mean, one of my most recent bands was a soul band.
Right.
We didn't do that much Motown, honestly. We did kind of a little bit. We tended to be a little bit newer stuff.
Sure.
But there were definitely some Motown things that we did. We did a little Temptations, we did some Stevie Wonder, things like that. So, definitely touched on what was going on there.
Yeah.
The thing for me is, if I'm going to be playing that, if I want to feel it, it really helps me to have the P bass. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, have that P bass.
Right.
Flat wounds,
Get there.
like you said, dead.
Yeah.
He used to Jamerson used to eat like the greasy fried chicken,
right?
And he was like, that's like he just added to the strings. Like, that's where the soul comes from.
Right,
it comes from the chicken grease, and I can't say I've ever gone out and go binge at the KFC and then like immediately run to the gig afterward or something. But,
or maybe you can.
But I might.
Right.
I might try
it's
one
a possibility.
day. You never know. But yeah, the P bass is the gotta have. Like,
right.
That's like it's like a non-negotiable.
Right. Are there any other aspects of like on the technical side, like gear wise, what you look at?
Yeah. Well, so this is funny. So last year I kind of fulfilled this dream that I had, and I finally got an original Ampeg B15N. It's a 1961. So it's the first year that they made the B15N. The year before that, it was the B15. They only made that for 1 year. It was 1960. In 1961, they came out with the B15N. The N stood for new. Right? I don't know how new it was. Like, what did they do that was newer? I don't know.
They put an N on it.
But yeah, I found one of these that was in the chassis, and actually the electronics to some extent were in really good shape.
Yeah.
Like the Lucite thing still lit up. The original transformers worked, like all that stuff. The speaker was blown, like it was the original Jensen speaker was in it, but completely blown. Like you couldn't, if you turned it up beyond a whisper, and I mean, I'm not talking about like a whisper for a deaf, rocker who's been, I mean, literally like a whisper.
Right.
If you got it over that, it would just have this, flatulent sound. It was just like, it was completely destroyed. So I had that taken out and had it replaced with something a little more modern, something compatible sound wise. A guy did that for me out in Warrenton.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, you still have me at flatulent.
I had your attention right there. Well, Dave. Yeah, so it did have to have a little bit of work done to the internals to put it back in working order, but it had been kept in a lot of its life, it had been kept in a studio or a closet, and it was abused and then put away as being like useless.
Right.
And I basically found this closet classic for I'm not going to tell you what I paid for because it was crazy. It was like crazy low. Mm-hmm. And then, I did another, $1,000 of work on it or whatever to get it back to working order. And it's phenomenal now.
Yeah.
So I love putting the P bass into that, and playing through that is amazing. But the funny thing is, here's the thing, like, and I didn't do that ignorant of what I'm about to tell you, but I did it because I knew that, you know, Jamerson probably used a setup like that on stages, you know, because that was the amp back then. Like, there really weren't a whole lot of amps to choose from. It was like that, you know, back in the early 60s. That was it.
Right.
But as it turns out, you know, they didn't really use that amp much in the studio because they really didn't have like fantastic mics for that, for basses.
That was the live rig. Really,
they used a DI, like they had a DI box, and they went straight to the console. That's how they did it. And the funny thing is, so you can buy a DI box now. I think Acme makes it.
does. That's right.
Yeah. And we'll put a link in the show notes for those of you who care. And I think it's about like $450.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a DI box that's been designed to spec, like down to the component level, to be as close as possible to the original boxes that they used in the Motown studios.
Because they made their own stuff then, right?
That wasn't a place, like, you didn't go down to like Musician's Friend and buy a DI box. They had to make them, right? And so, you can buy this one that's been handmade and hand wired similarly to those boxes. And that's what they used for all those recordings. But, you know, seeing as how you're probably not going to like do that like most stages or whatever, like this, having this B15 in really does make me very, very, very happy.
Yeah. If it brings you joy.
Exactly. Yeah. If it's music and you're happy with it, do it.
That's right.
And I think when I'm playing, the thing that I try and think about is the aspect of just the joy in his playing. And like, I probably don't worry quite as much about maybe every single move or every single note,
right?
But just thinking about, like, you know, doon, 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 like just thinking about his motion will give me, like, that gives me what I need. Like, it gives me the motive that I need to get in and play something that's fun and comes from the heart, but yet will deliver into the song, right? The feel that, you know, hopefully that's looking for. And, you know, hopefully it's not like too big a disservice or anything like that. I mean, I'll use those moves and, you know, bounce around like the Root 5 octave that he would do often. When it would seem like he was gearing up for something else. Like, there's something even more magical coming.
Right.
And he's like, oh, well, there's some space here and the music is kind of moving. So to propel it, I'm going to like do. And he just throw that in just because, you know, he could do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, you know,
but to at least like take the time to really deliver the essence.
Yeah.
Without overplaying, like that weird balance of, you know, getting that through is, it works. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. And, you know, I think when you have fun with the music, it kind of, that communicates.
That's right.
It really communicates something that was intrinsic to those songs. You know, it really mattered. Like those songs were made for people to dance to, whether it was a slow dance.
That's right.
You know, at the prom or whatever, or where there was like you know, people were getting their sweat on or whatever. It was like, it was designed to make you move, like make you feel something.
Exactly.
So just like playing a simple line, like it isn't enough. Like you want to really express, like you want to get into that headspace of, how do I have fun with this? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, to me, that's like the essence of it.
Yeah. I think that's critical. Like if I think of, you know, other things that I would add to this, that's certainly at the top of my list is my memory of, you know, my first memories of listening to Jamerson is they're not knowing that he's the bassist, right? Like hearing them as a child.
Yeah.
And, you know, remembering that's what I first learned to dance to. Right, like being a part of my family's house parties and knowing like that's what people were dancing to in the living room.
Right.
Of like mixed cultures and mixed people and just having that atmosphere that at the end of the day, it's like connecting that, the bass can drive a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's not all the bass, but man, we can really influence. And he got right to that. And for me, that's like super important.
Oh my gosh. Like that connection that you just made is that, I mean, that is, I think you just hit on the heart of why those songs are so timeless. I mean, they're great songs, right? A lot of these songs are absolutely genius writing, and the musicianship is great. The singing is fantastic.
Right.
Decades before there was like auto-tune and all that stuff, like, people really performed this stuff. And a lot of these are like live takes, like they're doing, you may be hearing the second take in the studio or something like that. And these guys are good. That's how they work. But beyond that, it was just this idea of, bringing people together and bringing like some peace and love in the world through music.
That's right.
And still to this day, that communicates. Like, I challenge anybody to like get a collection of like greatest hits of Motown music or something like that.
Right.
If you put that on, it doesn't matter who is there. It could be little kids who are 5 years old.
Yep.
It could be people sitting in a rehabilitation center who are like 90 years old.
That's right.
Everyone loves it. Like that is one of the most, I think it's one of the most universal genres, or one of the most universal times that music ever had. And it really is, like you said, the bass, like, because it taps into that low feeling of groove.
Yep.
That we're like hardwired as a species to receive that.
Yep.
And Jamerson tapped into that.
Yeah, he found it, and he, that's why, and not to cheese this up, but if you look at, we've all been to weddings.
Yeah.
When you go to weddings, when they want the dance floor to hit, it's Motown. That's what they're going to.
That's right. All you got to do is put a Motown song and everybody will get up.
And you could call it cheesy, but damn it, like, people are on the floor.
No, that's as real as it gets in my book. Like, that's it. I mean, that is it.
Right.
If we're striving for something like that, that's it. They found that.
Right.
And maybe we've been trying to get it back for a long time.
we had it for a minute. We had it.
Yeah. So, I mean, still worth looking into. So, know, we've talked a lot about, a lot of different facets of Jamerson. Are there any other points that you feel like, anything else that you wanted to say? Any point we didn't make here?
I mean, I think, I feel like we covered a lot. There are certainly a lot of areas that have been on my mind about this topic that, have come through. I probably would, not that we want to get too technical on this episode, but, there certainly needs to be some thought about just the technique in general and, what that actually, like, what that does, like, just the evenness of those sounds, and the fact, like, you were talking about how he went from like upright to electric, so it allowed, it allowed him to play with it, quicker and easier. But there is something about, after listening to Jamerson, I started thinking about the concept of approaching my bass with a lot more evenness, and it does something, right? Because now you're in control. You're not at the mercy of like, my middle finger always plays a little bit more aggressive. Yeah. And so even without doing that technique, it started to make me think about that.
It's like one attack. This attack.
Yeah.
Boom.
And you can go deeper, you could dig deeper or dig less, but at least then you're in control. And the other thing that it taught me too is the whole kind of muting thing. I mean, it's just a big piece of it. Of course there was foam in there or whatever, I'm sure there were different techniques that were happening, but I think a lot of it might even, the muting maybe was even in the left hand possibly.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bit of that. I think that people, some people will ape that with left hand, and, you certainly can do it with the foam under the bridge. And, that's a lot, that was like a typical thing back then, because you wanted to get, like, people were striving, I think, for the electric bass to be more like an upright, just louder. And so yet, the ringing that you would get from it was just not like, that didn't catch on as its own thing at that point, rather than having this bah, it'd be more like boom, boom.
Right.
Like you really wanted that, like that big round attack and then like a quick fall
deadening.
off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
And I don't know, these are all like stylistic things, but at least for me, when you explore something so simple and so almost pure, it's nice to try to figure out what was going on there and what can I learn from that?
Right.
Can I use that? Can I not use that? But it brings on a whole nother area of technique to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot to chew on there.
Yeah. What about? Do you have any other areas that we haven't really talked about that maybe to close this out?
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with the sound and what you're trying to represent. Getting that attack that's more like a very consistent, having a sound that's very round and very quick to decay, quick to fall off. Right. And if you can manage to learn how to hear that and make your bass playing, conform to that,
right,
that is another tool in your arsenal, and it will teach you how to, take your playing to, different genres, to have a different sound. Like it makes you more versatile.
Right.
So understanding that, I think, is it's a great tool for your bag.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think that sticks in my head is, there are these videos. I'm not sure if we've talked about these guys in a previous show, but we probably did. Wolfpack, right? Who's a modern kind of instrumental jam sort of band, and definitely very funky, very influenced by funk and soul. They have a series of videos that you can find on YouTube. And they show, and we'll link some of these in the show notes too, but they show graphically, right, this, kind of with a simplified version of what you would see on a music staff. They show you where Jamerson's lines are going, and you can literally watch his playing get from, like we were talking about, the simple lines that get more complex and they get like, this almost symphonic quality.
Right.
You can literally watch that develop as you watch this, the bouncing ball or whatever that shows where his notes are going. And watching that, even after all I knew about Jamerson, like watching that just gave me a whole new level of appreciation for what he did as a player.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely encourage people to go check those out. Check out, obviously go check out, if you're not real familiar with Motown recordings beyond like 2 or 3 songs, I mean, dive into that. Like you will not be disappointed. There's so much to chew on as a bass player, and so much to learn. And it's just great fun to listen to. Even if you don't even want to get to that level, even if it doesn't interest you to learn how to play that stuff, it's so much fun to listen to.
Yeah.
So,
they're great songs it's a great genre just to listen to, and then you can also listen to it as a bassist and as a musician. Yeah. And it's almost, sometimes two different things when you start to deconstruct it, and it's good stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's as good a place as any to end. So, we hope you guys have enjoyed this discussion on James Jamerson. Leave us some feedback, right? Stop by the website at practicalbass.com, or, go to one of our social media sites. Facebook is a great place to reach us. Look for Practical Bass. You can also find us on Twitter or Instagram or Google+. Leave us messages, photos. I don't know, if you got a Jamerson style rig or a bass or something like that, send us your photos. We'd love to see that stuff. It's great. Spread the bass love. That's what we're all about. An easy way to do that is, again, go to practicalbass.com, look for the subscribe link. You can find information there. Subscribing is easy on any podcasting or podcatching app. If you're on an iPhone, you can go to your podcasts app and search for us there. You can find us on Google Play Music on your Android phone or device, or any computer for that matter. You can find us on iTunes on your Mac. You can find us on Stitcher Radio on any platform. When you do, just search for Practical Bass.
and you'll see our friendly black and white logo come up. Hit the subscribe link and you're going to get a new episode delivered straight to you every week so you can hear what we're talking about. And again, don't be shy about sharing topics that you'd like to hear. This one was shared by one of our good friends, Adam Smolensky. We want to thank him for kind of seeding the ground with, a great topic. And we've done this in the past, and hopefully we'll do it again in the future, according to what you guys want. So we'll look forward to hearing from you. And until then, I'm Paul Frields.
I'm Dave Guzman.
And this has been Practical Base.
Thanks for listening.
So there I was at Strange Ways Brewing, Fredericksburg. And
Bling.
And I was talking to the barmaid, for want of a better term. And, we were chatting about beer stuff and other things. And she's like, oh, yeah, what's going on? I said, oh, well, a friend who's coming over tonight, we're doing some recording. And she's like, oh, what are you recording? I said, well, we host a podcast. And she asked what the podcast. I explained the concept. And she thought, she said, oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. She's like, I just recently got into podcasts. And, I got my growlers. And I was like, she's like, I hope this is the best podcast ever. And I was just like, that was super nice. That was super
great.
Nice of you to say. And
no
I said,
one's ever gave me that.
And I said, well,
comment before.
I said, well, maybe we'll name drop you guys in the podcast. And she's like, oh, you should definitely do that. I'm like, well, other people pay us not to, so
right.
Let's see what you think afterward.